Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to the Laugh Cry Club. I'm Joy.
I'm Rebecca.
And we're so glad you're here for another week, another episode of two licensed therapists solving all your problems.
Yeah.
What more could you want from a podcast?
Right. I mean, two licensed therapists with 20 years experience each. If we are one therapist, that makes us really ancient. We have like all the knowledge.
So much knowledge.
Yeah.
We've been doing this I just looked at the calendar. It's been 2 years. Isn't that wild?
Oh my gosh, it doesn't feel like it.
Isn't that wild?
Oh
2
I love
years.
it. Wow.
Happy anniversary.
Yeah, okay. Happy anniversary to you.
Thank you.
We're having an anniversary. I love it.
I've said this before. Doing a podcast is not easy. It takes a lot of consistency, a lot of dedication. You got to show up. But it just has flown by. I've had such a blast doing this with you. And I know I said this on our 100th episode. It's like having a standing date to just like see you is really beneficial for me.
Thank you. I love that too. It is to me. It's like, I need my anchor. Where's my anchor this week?
Yeah, it's a great anchor.
Let's talk about some therapy stuff.
Exactly. So, hey, if you're out there thinking of doing a podcast with one of your good friends, it's a great way to just like have a little fun project to do together and have a time, or you have like a dedicated time. So if you're new to the show, we are, like we said, licensed therapists. We've been in the field for a long time. We are here to share our knowledge with you on a specific topic every week. And we kind of go off track sometimes. We did a couple episodes about some real crime stories, which were just really fascinating. More from the angle of human behavior, which we'll probably do that at some point again too, just because human behavior is our jam and we like to understand why people do what they do. But today we're going to talk about something that everyone can relate to, and that is the inner critic. Your inner voice that is constantly going, that little, I don't know, maybe it's a Jiminy Cricket where you're just like,
is it really that small? Yours is
sometimes
a Jiminy Cricket
like a monster.
size?
Yeah. Well, that's actually a good way to look at it, is like, what would you describe your inner critic? Like, what does it look like to you?
Yeah.
Like when you envision your inner critic or like that voice, do you have like a photo or like an image in your mind?
I didn't, but now I'm thinking of it. Like when you just said that, it just kind of hit me of like this little red-faced, you know, those meme like red-faced devil demon, like the big mouth, like in the claws,
monster, the
monstrous. Yeah, that hit me as like an image, and I'm like, ooh, that's really scary. Like to have that. But on that note, I think it's really important too, like even having a name for your inner critic, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I have honestly, surprisingly, never really thought of it this way until just now. I'm sure at some point we talked about this with clients in therapy of like really talking back to that inner voice, but I don't think I've ever sat and be like, let's conceptualize this into a being of something that you're like, put a picture to it, with it, describe it to where you can make it separate from yourself. That way I think it's easier to manage when we can separate it from us as a human being, because this is a part of every human experience, is having this inner critic. But if you can also be like, yes, that's the part that's going to show up, and know that that is normal, I feel like there's a little bit of an ease to handling it.
I mean, we all have parts, right? There's all parts of us. We show up differently with different people. And
can you expand on that just for a second? Because I think that's a concept not everyone's familiar with, as far as like when we're talking parts.
I'll just kind of describe it. I think an easy way for people is that we are obviously one person, but we show up differently with different people. For instance, if I'm at work or supervising people, I'm going to show up in a certain way. I'm going to use certain language. But then if I'm chilling with my homies, I'm just being myself, silly,
You're
goofy, letting loose, relaxed. I mean, that's a simplistic way to think about it. But I think for our listeners, like, you can think about how do you show up with different people, different environments, and you yourself will be able to identify that, I'm not the relaxed, goofy me all the time, because that's probably, other people wouldn't find that appropriate, and they wouldn't take me serious either.
Like you have a certain filter around certain people.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like I have different personalities essentially showing up. Like say, there is a diagnosis of dissociative disorder, which is a completely different thing, but that we all have like these different parts of us that make us this whole person, that we're going to show up differently. With that is we have this part that shows up for ourselves. Sometimes we are a champion for ourselves, and sometimes we are our worst enemy, right?
Yeah. And if you've ever done internal family systems work, this is very much a part of that type of therapy. They actually call it parts work, where it's kind of grouped into a few categories. So if you're familiar with that, it's kind of the same concept of understanding that there are parts of you that show up to the party. There's the part of you that shows up to the work personality. And I think it can just feel a little confusing when you're not familiar with like that concept, because it'll be like, why do I feel so insecure when I'm doing this at work, but when I'm at home, I'm just so much more comfortable? Well, that's why, because we do have different filters in different environments. You're more comfortable around your friends. You can let your guard down around family. That's why we lash out towards the people we love the most, because we feel safe with them. And so there's all sorts of things that come up. It's very interesting. But for today, we are talking about the inner critic part.
Yeah.
So what that does to us and how it can maybe serve us.
This kind of idea came to me because I was watching something from another therapist that I know online who is an art therapist. They were talking about the inner critic from their perspective, being an art therapist. We all have this part of us. Every single human being does. But how do we harness this power for it to become an ally of ours? Because when we think of the critic, it's negative. My image sounded really scary that I have of my inner critic, but how can I harness what it's trying to do as my ally? So it just kind of got me started thinking about it, because I think we all have this. I'm curious, how for you did your inner critic kind of show up?
The way that I think about it is like a constant hum in the background. And I don't have an image, which is why I think I was so fascinated when we started talking about that. I was like, oh, actually, I don't have an image of the inner critic. It's just this kind of white space with a voice behind it, kind of like
a
Oz,
vacuum, like an empty, static
just
space?
An empty static space with. If you think of Oz, it's like the great and powerful Oz. It just kind of comes out of nowhere. So that's kind of how I think about it. I just feel like it's this constant, like I said, it's a low hum where we have the choice. And I try to think about it of like how high I turn the volume up. So is the volume really high today? Is it really, really loud? How can I turn the volume down? So that's what I think of when we're talking about inner critic.
That's a great point, because it's like maybe always there, but how loud is it?
Exactly.
It becomes louder when we're under stress, typically.
And I think we each have areas in our life that we might want to start thinking about of like when it gets the loudest, because as you were just saying this, I'm like, oh, I know one of my triggers, and I always feel silly when I say it because, I don't have kids. I don't have like an extremely stressful life, but I don't do well with a lot of unstructured time, but I like a good balance. So on the weekends, if I have, let's say my husband's out of town, he's on a work trip, and I'm by myself and I don't have a lot of things planned, I start to panic. Like Friday comes and I'm like, I don't have anything planned. I got to get something planned. I got to do, because that starts to spiral me when I am aimless, when I don't have an anchor of like something I need to accomplish that weekend. And so that's when my inner critic starts to really get loud. So I have to know that about myself to be like, all right, how can I make sure that I don't go into like this tailspin of too much idle time? So that's kind of an example of like when it gets louder.
What kind of things does it say? Like if you don't have things planned?
Oh God, I just spin. I'm like, if I have a whole day, empty day ahead of me, which might be someone else's dream, I understand that. And I'm not saying I want to have like a full day of like really hard, strenuous work. I'm just saying I need social interaction. And so it'll be like, you're going to be alone. What are you going to do all day? You're just going to sit and watch reality TV, you lazy piece of shit. You know what I mean? Like, because there is a draw to just want to do that. There's that push pull.
Yeah.
I kind of just want to lay on the couch and watch TV all day. And then the critic is like, don't do that.
You need to be productive.
So exactly. So if I'm aimless and I don't have anything to do, it will like start drill sergeant me, and it will be like, don't just sit on the couch all day. Don't be freaking lazy.
I used to have that too, but I've been able to work through it where now I'm like, a day of doing nothing, I'm like, great. I don't have to have a plan.
Teach me your ways.
Yeah, I just will be like, oh, I'm going to work on my little miniature set that I'm putting together, or I'm going to go for a swim, or I might work in the garden a little bit, or whatever. I'm just like, as long as I don't have to like sit and really think and be on, I'm good with it.
That's a good distinction, because you're basically like, you still have activities, but they're like enjoyable activities.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I need to just focus on too. It's like, there's almost like a checklist that goes in my head of like the things that I need to accomplish that day. day. It's like, okay, you went to the grocery store, but it's 10 o'clock. Now what are you going to do for the rest of the day?
Right. Like you can't sit on the couch and veg out now. Okay. That has been my hardest thing. I think this summer I've gotten better at it, or maybe like the last 6 months, but I used to be like going like the Energizer Bunny. I would be like, okay, I have all these projects to do. And like, you can't sit down and relax and watch the show until it's like 4 p.m. or 5 o'clock and you've done all the things, right? And what would happen is I would even skip eating because I would be so locked in the zone. I'd be like, I don't have time to eat lunch. I can't even sit to eat lunch because I'm going to slip into, let me watch the show now. And I have things to do. It's almost like this kind of internal value I have of like work and productivity. Like you've got to just don't relax until you get all your shit done.
Right. That's exactly what I do. It's almost because we have it so accessible to us, where back when we were growing up, or even in high school, even in college, we had so many competing needs where you have to get this class done or you will fail. And of course, like we have jobs and we have to get certain things done or else we'll, get fired. I'm not talking like that. We don't have that, but there's a freedom and there's an accessibility throughout our days, especially because we both work from home, that you're like, okay, I just need to make sure that I am accomplishing something, because especially being at home, it's so much easier to fall into like, I'm just going to get some laundry done, or I'm going to go, sweep off the porch in between this break, which is fine, but it has blurred the boundaries of this like weird productivity thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if anyone else like that out there has had that, especially like if you work from home, where, when I was working out of the office, you come home and then you like start your house stuff and you do your chores and whatever. I think that's also why kind of like on the weekends, I feel like I have to just keep a momentum going. Productivity. And you're not allowed to relax until you get these things done. It's so weird.
What does your inner critic say to you if you're not producing? Is there a message? Because I have one that it's very easy, I think.
Yeah, what is yours?
Mine is that I'm being lazy. Don't be lazy.
Mine. That's mine.
I was thinking, I just didn't want to assume it. I think that it's for a lot of people that are like, you got to produce, you got to do. It's like, don't be lazy. So that's part of your inner critic. That's a critical negative voice beating you up to perform or tell you why you can't relax. It's like relaxing, taking a moment to even eat right now is bad. You're a bad person if you do this. It's so important then to recognize what it's telling you. Like it's saying, I'm lazy. And then to really think that through. Like, is that true? Am I really a lazy person? If I play that script through, I know that's not true. And am I being lazy by taking a break to eat some lunch or get out of the hot sun? My reality brain says, absolutely not. You have to take care of yourself. I've just got there's this thing that's part of me that says, push, do.
And we live in a hustle culture, even though I feel like it's gotten a little bit better, but we do live in a hustle culture that rewards productivity. And so that is the narrative.
Yep.
And, we've talked about like the default mode where your default is like the things that you just go back to because it's always been there. And that voice is always going to say, don't be lazy. But the funny thing is like, what does that even mean? If I was to like not do something for a day, it's like, you're lazy. And it's like, okay. The thing that it brings along with it that I think we should really dive into too, it feels uncomfortable. There's a discomfort. So it's not even just like the thought, but I feel physically uncomfortable. Like I can feel it in my body where I just feel antsy. Like I feel like I need to move. I cannot sit still. If I sit still, it kind of like reinforces this lazy narrative. So the other thing that's like, because you have wearables, right? You have like either an Oura Ring or an Apple Watch or some type of like step counter. That's the other thing. Like I'm getting feedback on how lazy or not lazy I am.
Yes. I had to stop checking that stuff. Like anytime it's like, it's time to stand and I'm like, whatever. I just like, I don't.
You stand. Don't tell me to stand.
Here, let me take you off. I've been able to get to a place where I'm like, who cares? I mean, it's taken me a long time to get here.
So where does this come from?
That's a great
Where does our
question.
inner critic
That's
come
a great
from?
Question. I think it's probably different for everybody. I think the biggest thing is how we were raised. What was our childhood parenting experience? I think generations too. What generation were you raised in? We were raised in, we're Gen X. We were raised in a generation of produce, don't lay around. It's Saturday morning. It's a beautiful day out there. You're not staying inside.
No, you're
the
not
kids were
staying
kicked
inside.
out. You were
Get
go
out
do
of the
something.
house, go do stuff, and then don't come home till the lights come on.
Exactly. Do not come back here. I don't want to see you.
Yeah, exactly.
People sometimes are like perfectionist, which I think is a whole other interesting thing about like what drives perfectionism, feeling this desire or need, like you have to be perfect all the time.
I know it comes from childhood. I think everyone can trace it back to something in childhood. The critic for me is I have a twin brother, so we were constantly, I always had someone to compare myself to. Like,
oh, yeah,
truly, I think siblings, you're always going to compare yourself to siblings, but when you have a twin, you have someone that you're literally in lockstep with through every single step of your school experience, grades. There was always this pressure because my brother is a high achiever and I had that too. We both did, luckily. But then it kind of turns into this, like, we're comparing and what grade you got on this and what grade you get on that. Was also very much a doer. The environment that I grew up in, like you said, we're Gen X. It was kind of expected that you're not lazy. You have chores to do. You make sure that you're doing something productive. You can't just sit around all day.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of generations that, enforce that or had that narrative. But, I grew up in a very competitive town where, it was just a lot of things to compete with, whether it be looks, whether it be money people had. So I compared myself with other families of like how we were more like lower middle class where everyone else was more like upper middle class. The narrative is underlying. It's not something I think about every day, but I can trace it back to that where I'm like, oh yeah, I don't want to fall behind.
And I think the other important part is like, why does this critic even form? And it's a survival strategy. I kind of feel like everything when you talk about like therapy techniques or the reasons why people do things, it's survival.
It's honestly, I was just going to say that.
All about,
we can all trace it back to being a survivor and survive.
Like you have to figure it out and to survive. It's hardwired in as the human being species, right? Because it's wired in every species. You have to survive.
If you think about fear, you can trace that to surviving.
Yeah.
Loneliness. You could trace that to surviving because if you don't have a social circle,
all right,
you will die.
Yes.
You need a tribe around you, Yes. So I feel like that is just such a good point of like, just so we can all collectively take a breath and be like, look, everyone, all these struggles that we're dealing with is just tied to our biological need to survive. Yeah. So like, let's not do the secondary feeling of feeling bad for feeling bad or like, why do I have this critic? Why is it so loud? Well, everyone has it. Everyone has it because we would die without it.
We have it because we're trying to keep ourselves in this like space of other people thinking or perceiving us as being a good human, doing the right thing. And so if we ever think, oh my gosh, maybe I'm not doing the right thing or I'm a real fuck up because I did something, then it's going to be real problematic to other people, that tribe of people, because the human species is very community driven, which a lot of species are. Like, dogs are in packs. They have family systems and the whole system has to function together.
The natural reaction, I think, and you probably have experienced this, is like the natural reaction when this comes up is to be like, ugh, just ignore it, or trying to fight it, or even just trying to push it away, where we should know better because fighting anything doesn't make it go away, just makes it bigger. What we can do when this happens, because it will inevitably happen, it may be happening right this moment, is to ask what it's telling you or what lesson is it trying to teach you right now. Because when we look at it from that way as like, this is a signal, it's trying to tell me something. What am I supposed to learn from this? Like that then brings it together to where you can be like an ally and you can work together with that critical voice, because again, it's trying to keep you alive. So fighting it is not going to do you any good.
But I think that's a good call to think about it. Like, what is it trying to tell me? Then you realize it's trying to keep me alive. Great. Like I can actually, that's where it's an ally for you. It's doing what it's supposed to. But do I need it right now? And to the level of intensity that it's providing this to me?
Probably not. So especially this comes up a lot at work because we're in a performance environment. Like there's There's just no way around it. You have, most workspaces have, annual reviews or mid-year reviews. Like, you're being reviewed for a job that you're at. You're performing.
Your boss is reviewing you, even if it's not a formal review. You're just meeting or they've given you a task. It's a review.
Yeah. So you're in an environment that is
Constantly.
just objectively being reviewed. And I have a lot of clients come to me who struggle with this, where they're like, I just get so stressed at work because I'm worried about failure, or this person said this to me and then I feel like a dumb idiot. Like, our critic is really going to show up at work. God bless it. It's just trying to keep us alive. It's trying to keep our job. This is where you can kind of go, all right, I care so much about this job. That's a good thing. The critic is telling you that you're a failure. So what am I afraid of? Okay, I'm afraid of messing up. So then you can kind of start having this like self-dialogue of, okay, if I mess up, then I mess up, and I'll have a conversation with my boss about it and we'll be productive together versus, and this kind of goes back to what I think it was last week. We talked a little bit about like work environments, because if you're not in a work environment where mistakes, when we talked about mistakes,
right,
mistakes are accepted, it is hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like, it's
really
not,
hard.
it's not easy to mess up. Your critic is probably going to be really, really, really loud in a space, in a toxic work culture, because the toxic work culture like feeds the inner critic. So that's another thing I want to make sure people understand too, that it's not as easy as just like turning off your inner critic or talking. Like, these tools that we're giving you are really kind of for general neutral situations. Mm-hmm. If you're literally in either a relationship that's really toxic, a friendship that's really toxic, a job that's really toxic, it's a lot harder to employ these tools because you're literally in an environment with that like dirty water analogy, where it's murky, it's cloudy, you can't really get a clear view of what's happening. So you might want to also consider the environment you're in, because the inner critic can be a little bit louder and harder to kind of filter out if you're dealing with situations that are like really objectively just hard on you.
Well, all your senses are going to be highly activated in a toxic environment, because it's essentially your body is trying to keep you alive again. It's
It's a threat.
It's like, I got to cross this river that's full of piranhas and alligators. It's murky and dark. It's got a strong current in it, but I have to get over it to survive. And it's like, that's the toxic environment or the relationship. So of course, all the senses are heightened because it's saying, don't get bit by a piranha. Don't get bit by an alligator. Don't get swept up in the current. Make sure you're swimming as hard as you can and you're just locked in. Yeah, it's so hard because you want to survive.
It all goes back to the survival.
Yeah, it all does. And I think, the bigger thing too is like when you're talking about the work example and like, what are you afraid of, is that, people don't want to mess up. But I think then you have to track it back even further. Well, what does messing up over and over and over likely mean? That means I lose my job. What does that mean? That means I don't have a paycheck. I don't have money. Then what does that mean? That means I can't pay my bills. What does that mean? I lose my house. What does that mean? I lose my car. And then you're like, I'm on the street. And so that's ultimately when we think of like, I don't want to mess up, our brain has already traced it back to, now I have nothing and I'm on the street.
And that's like truly when I was younger, that's all I would do, because I was so afraid of losing my job, not having a way to support myself, being homeless on the street. Like that's how quick our brain will go because of something negative, something critical. It's trying to keep us alive. It's trying to keep a roof over our head. If we're looking at the environment we're in, also taking that into consideration. But when this critic comes up, you want to look at, what is this trying to teach me? What is coming up for me right now? If you can just kind of sit with it for a moment, name the feeling, be like, I'm feeling really scared. Last week when I mentioned like the mistakes at work, I was like, I'm just feeling really embarrassed.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling really like unqualified or, ashamed. Really kind of sitting with that to dig deeper into what's going on with you. Look at it and go, okay, so what can I gain or what can I learn from this experience? Because it is trying to teach you something. Like Rebecca said, it's trying to keep us alive. We are feeling threatened. So how can we move back into feeling a little bit safer? You can also practice that like self-compassion of, if
that's a
Rebecca, like last week with the mistakes, where I'm like, if you make a mistake, I'm like, yeah, we're human. If I make a mistake, I'm like, you piece of shit, So if you ask yourself, like, if someone you love made the same mistake, or if something, the same situation happened, you would be so nice to them and really try to give them a pep talk. So be your own best friend, give yourself a pep talk. Honestly, it takes practice. It takes a lot of practice because we're not good at doing this for ourselves.
Right.
But it really is your body and your mind just trying to survive. So you can be like, thank you for trying to keep me alive. And we don't need to take it that far, Yeah.
So what you're saying is get curious, be a good coach to yourself, like coach yourself out of, be a Ted Lasso, harness your inner Ted Lasso.
Exactly.
And then think this is great that it's here and it's helping me. However, maybe I don't need you to go that far right now because that's not reality.
Yeah. The other piece to be very careful of is social media. There's so many. The other piece that I want to warn people about is like when you have that inner critic, you can easily find things that will validate how you're feeling. So if you go on social media and maybe you post something, you're already in a vulnerable state and some stranger on the internet says something rude, you're going to immediately internalize that. So just be very careful to understand that you're literally standing in front of a firing squad if you go on social media in a vulnerable state.
And be careful what you say out loud, too, when your phone's nearby. Because sometimes we beat ourselves up out loud. You'd be like, you goddamn idiot, you're such a piece of shit, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, and all the robots are listening. They will validate
They will
you.
be like, here's some more shit for you.
And then they'll be showing you ads about like these pills that you need to like lose another 10 pounds because it's like...
Yes, yeah, here, you need to lose some weight and get a facelift and here's some skin cream.
Look at those wrinkles.
Yeah, it's like, here's all the ways to self-improve yourself. But so I think also another important part of this is differentiating between accountability and the self-attacks that the inner critic is doing. So like this ties in actually great with the last episode about mistakes, that mistakes, when that happens, our inner critics fire up, tells us all how terribly we are, blah, blah, blah. But then like, do we continue to beat ourselves up, like attack ourselves, or is there some level of accountability that we need to take? And so there is a difference.
Yeah, I can't help but think about like, this also brings up, if you can take accountability, but is it hard for you to take accountability? Sometimes our egos are just too delicate to be like, I made a mistake. And this goes back to last week. How were you raised around mistakes? And what was the narrative when you made a mistake? And Brene Brown talks about this a lot, especially around shame, which is like accountability is I made a mistake, but the inner critic and the shame part is like, I am a mistake. I am a failure. So internalizing it to be like, I am a bad person versus I did a bad thing.
The behavior is different than the person.
Totally.
But separate.
Right.
You are not your behaviors. People do terrible things. They make mistakes. They do bad things, but it doesn't mean that you are the behavior or that you can't change.
Do you think everyone can change?
Oh, that's a big question.
I know. I'm sorry. Right at the end.
I think everybody has the possibility to change, but there are so many various factors in that not everybody has the ability maybe to recognize all the possibilities and all the
like
strengths.
Emotional, the emotional IQ, like the EQ,
Yeah.
So if you don't have emotional maturity, emotional intelligence,
or the resources
and insight. So if you lack insight, if you lack the ability to, think of others, the reason I'm asking this is because of the Mackenzie Shrilla documentary we talked about. After that episode, I went on a deeper dive, and there's a lot of podcasts out there that like got access to all of the phone calls she did in jail with her mom and her friends. And that is someone that will never change.
It's a trip. I believe, I don't know, it's so big. I do think people have the ability to change. I do believe that. Whether they will or not, that's a whole nother story. But I think there's an ability. I think she has an ability to make changes, but she's going to choose to or not to because of the ego.
Yeah,
I think a lot of it goes back to how strong is the ego.
I don't think her parents will ever have the emotional intelligence to understand their behaviors and understand the impact it has on others. Like that's what they're so completely lacking.
They're so enmeshed with each other, and it's like an okaying of the behavior. Like there's no accountability there, right?
Zero accountability.
So I think to change, you have to be able to take accountability,
right?
And
so it kind of goes back to what we were just saying, yeah.
And if you can't take accountability, accountability, then you're never going to change because you don't see that there's a problem.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's where I think that's where we get into dangerous territory as humans, is that if you can't take accountability for your actions and you're constantly kind of pointing fingers at other people as the reason, or, people will be like, you're always playing the victim.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing to analyze about yourself, or just question about yourself if that's something that people have told you before. But
I think in that case, what happens is then the tribe, your community, starts to push you out.
Yes, they will push you
out.
Which
is, that's all about survival as well. The tribe or the grouping, the pack needs to survive. And if you're going to fuck us up, what we got going on here, you're out of here because we have to survive. And if you are in here, we can't.
And you're threatening that pack. Yeah. That's such a good way of putting it. So closing takeaways here is our inner critic is there. It is loud at times. You can soften it if you pay attention to maybe the patterns and know when it's a weak spot, like I was giving the example around the weekends. But our inner critic is there to serve as a signal. So if we label it good or bad, it doesn't really get us anywhere. So if we can look at it as like this overprotective bodyguard that is trying to keep us alive, and we look at it from a place of curiosity, like Rebecca said, the goal is to not eliminate it. If you focus on the goal of eliminating it, it's going to just waste your energy. Don't even waste your time on trying to eliminate it.
Yeah. It actually, you do need it.
You need it.
Because I think it helps you be accountable.
Yes.
But I really like that idea of an overprotective bodyguard, because then that makes me have a different relationship with it. It's like, okay, big guy, these people want my autographs right now. They're not hurting me. I'm going to go ahead and
maybe instead of
your
your scary monster, you should start thinking of it like as this really badass bodyguard.
And I'd be like, dude, can I have some space? Because I don't need you right now. I like that. I'm going to use it.
I'm going to envision all of Taylor Swift's bodyguards. Like, that's my critic, because they're really good at what they do. Kept her safe.
Yeah, I'm thinking of like this really big, gigantic guy. He's just, his biceps are as big as my head, and like they're busting out of his shirt.
He's working real hard.
He is. Yeah. He's not taking shit.
Not taking shit from nobody. So thank your inner bodyguard. Maybe you start labeling it that instead of your inner critic. Maybe that's an easier way to think about what it's doing when it comes up, because it will come up. I'd love to hear from people if this has been helpful, if this specific topic has been helpful for you. Do you have your inner critic on right now? Like, is there anything lately that you've been
It's
feeling?
not on right now, but I do recognize it comes up a lot of times when I'm like doing things. So I got a new squat rack, which I'm really excited about for my home gym, and I have to put it together, and then, all the directions, blah, blah, blah. And if you screw something up, and it's a whole thing. If you don't read the directions right and you have to over tighten something, and it's a whole thing. And so I have just learned in life that sometimes I make mistakes putting things together, and then I really hate on myself hard because I'm like, you're such an idiot. Why did you do that? Because then I can't get the bolt undone, or I think I get so afraid of messing something up, because to me, messing something up, like putting together something really expensive, my inner critic shows up because I'm thinking, don't mess this up, because this is going to be, this is going to affect you financially then, right? Like one mistake can cost me thousands of dollars. But I've been able to track it back. It's like I have this kind of scarcity mindset sometimes around money, because I was just thinking about it. Like, even as a kid, like, don't mess it up.
Yeah.
Because you're not getting a replacement.
Right. That's the same thing. Like, I would hoard,
like,
not hoard, God. But I would really keep things as pristine as possible for as long as possible. And if I got like one scratch on something, I would freak out.
It was a freaking nightmare. It was a meltdown because guess what? You're not getting replaced. Now as an adult, I probably could replace it. But it's that old mindset of like, this is going to cost you a lot of money. So you better do it right the first time. Right. So that's kind of where it's been showing up lately. And, but I just keep telling myself that like people make mistakes. Just because if I don't put this together right or break up something, it's okay.
Yeah. Good for you.
Yes. And I'm going to think about it as my bodyguard now. How about you? Yeah. You got anything showing up for you with your inner critic?
Honestly, this week, no. I'm not saying it's not there. It just hasn't been very loud. So it's been pretty quiet. I'm just going to leave it at that, because I just feel like last week was pretty loud, and I had to work through that. And I had a really hard weekend with like some aimless plans. But the nice thing is you always get over it. you survive and it kind of moves on. So,
and then you're on to the next thing because you don't have time in your brain to be ruminating about what you didn't do over the weekend. Thanks everybody for being here today. Again, if there's a topic that you want to hear or you have thoughts to share with us, you can reach out at laughcryclub@gmail.com. You can find us on social media, but we love being here with you and appreciate you all.
We love you so much. Thanks for spending time with us. We're glad you're in the club and we'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.